Awesome.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody to another episode of Reversing Your Autoimmune Story. Today, Melissa and I are going to talk about a subject that I think really gets kind of brushed under the rug when it comes to autoimmune disorders. And so the subject matter today is going to be food sensitivities and chronic inflammation and how these really tie in to multiple different autoimmune disorder diagnoses. Um, Ones that come to mind for me just right off the top of my head are like RA, lupus, and celiac, right? And there are other ones, but those are the ones that come to the top of mind for me when it comes to food sensitivities. So, Melissa, let me just ask you, what what does it really mean to have a food sensitivity? Just simple question there.
Oh, I love this question because I hear this a lot with from clients that are coming in from, wherever, whoever they've worked with before, and they've heard about food sensitivities, but they're like, what is it and how does it work? So there are basically three things that can be going on when your body is not okay with a food. The first one is the one we're most used to hearing about. That's an IgE reactivity. So that's like a peanut allergy, right? And the person comes in contact with it. There's a histamine response. You start swelling, the throat starts swelling. It's scary. It's really scary, but that's an IgE reactivity. So when we're talking about IgE, IgA, IgG, these are immunoglobulin reactivity in the body. This is literally the immune system going. The second thing that can happen if a food doesn't feel good in the body is the body sometimes can not have the enzymes needed to break that food down. So it kind of sits in the digestive tract or in the stomach and kind of ferments a little bit. And that can make you
So,
feel like crap.
one thing that's coming to mind for me here, and as a nutritionist, this is a question that I get a lot too, but I'm going to have you answer this question. There is a difference between a food allergy and a food sensitivity. There's a
Yeah.
difference. And so many people think, well, I'm not allergic to anything, so that can't be the problem. And they're very wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. So a food sensitivity is literally an IgG or an IgA reactivity to a food. And that is not a histamine response.
Yeah.
It is a slow inflammatory response. So depending on which an IgG or an IgA reactivity that is happening in the body, that reaction to a specific food might not actually peak until 3 to 5 days after.
Mm.
And then the inflammation caused by that one exposure, say you eat it on Monday, by Thursday, you're feeling like actual crap. And you don't really get to feeling good until the following Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, because it takes that long for the inflammatory pattern to complete. So say, for example, this food, you eat it every day. Maybe it's your favorite thing you have for breakfast. Your body never has a chance for the inflammatory response to calm.
Mm-hmm.
And put that together for weeks and months and years. And what do you have?
We have chronic inflammation now. Huge. And to me, like one of the things that you said there that I think is so interesting, a lot of times if we eat something, like we're really familiar with food poisoning or, an upset tummy, indigestion or whatever, which happens immediately really after you eat something, right? Within a 24-hour period, hey, I have food poisoning now and I can trace it back to, that crappy burger I got at the gas station when I was driving through, right? Something must have been wrong with that.
Yeah.
But for a food sensitivity and you ate something and the symptoms don't start to show up until 3 to 4 days later, how much have you ate in that time period? And how the heck am I supposed to know why I feel like crap now? Like, how do you, that is just a really big thing to understand. It could have been anything in that 72-hour period, right?
And this is one of the reasons why an elimination diet doesn't work,
Mm, that kind of hits me hard, right? Because
right?
and I want to tell everybody listening today that working with Melissa over the last year, like I have been, she's completely crushed so many of my protocols, right, that I've used with my clients over the years. And she's been like, yeah, that doesn't work. And they work in some instances, but not in all instances, right? And so I would put people on an elimination diet pretty much every time I started working with somebody so I could figure out, okay, well, what's not working, and we'll go through journaling and how do you feel after an hour and how do you feel after 24 hours. Um, but go ahead and explain to us, like this ties together, but why the elimination diet just really does not work in most instances, honestly.
So I'm really sorry to rain on your parade, my dear. So when I went through school too, I mean, way back when, that was taught to me as the gold standard because we didn't have testing like we have today. The food sensitivity testing that we had was, 35, 45, 55% accurate.
Right.
And then the other part was, the opportunity for false positives. Who would do that? I
Mm.
mean, still got food sensitivity testing rolling around out there for like 35 bucks or whatever. That's what it is. You can't trust it.
Playing Russian roulette with your health, honestly.
Like, yeah, I will spend 500 bucks on something that I can trust and that's 98, 99.9% accurate before I spend 35 bucks on something I'm like, well,
Kitty.
learn something here, I hope. So with an elimination diet, what you really are learning is, yes, what clues does the body show you? And it's so valuable in that a person learns to really listen to their body. You're going to pick up histamine reactivity. You're going to pick up when the body doesn't have the enzymes to break down the food because you feel bad, right?
Mhm.
But very likely you're not going to be able to pick up a food sensitivity because it's so far removed from the actual ingestion of the food.
Yeah.
Who's going to look 5 to 7 days back to see what they ate every time they start to have maximum symptomology? And still there's a full day's worth of food, and it's going to be major detection and take a long time. And sometimes you're not even going to get it.
Mhm.
So I like to tell this story because it so kind of puts this in like a spotlight, right? Was working with a client who had done an elimination diet and was still just in terrible shape. So what we did is food sensitivity testing, and one of the things that was highest for her was cinnamon.
Oh my gosh.
How in the heck are you going to figure that out as an ingredient in so many other things? And as soon as she took that out, we started to see progress in her autoimmune condition because she was having it every morning in her tea. She was having it in her smoothie because
Mm.
another piece of this was she had some glucose imbalance, and cinnamon is supposed to help balance your glucose, right? So she was
Yeah.
using the heck out of it. And what was really happening is it was making her inflamed and progressing her autoimmune condition to the point where we're like, we weren't even thinking about glucose at that point. We had bigger things to think about.
Mhm. That is so interesting. And I love how you say that. So anybody listening to this can think, yes, so I had this going on. And in this case, it's a glucose um, variability, right? Not being able to stabilize glucose. And we know that one of the natural stabilizers for glucose is cinnamon. So wonderful. And we love it and it tastes good. And why not, right? never think that it could be a problem. And then in this person's instance, they're making it worse. I kind of even wonder if the glucose variable
Exactly.
even evened out for her, because then you're causing so much chronic inflammation in the body that affects glucose levels as well. So,
Exactly.
oh my
Exactly.
gosh. So what I'm hearing here really is that the value and the how do I want to say this best, but the importance of really getting a deep dive into potential food sensitivities can stop you from being on this hamster wheel of trying
Exactly.
all of this stuff over and over and over and over and over again, and you may be making yourself worse in the process. So that's
Yes.
just really a cool story about that.
Can I tell another one?
Please do. We love stories.
So there's all these diets, right, for autoimmune conditions. And for a lot of people, they can be really, really helpful. But it doesn't leave room for these kinds of findings. So another really useful thing is when you have a food sensitivity test to know exactly what foods your body can handle and what they can't. Because
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you how many folks come in, they've been, this food taken away and this food taken away either by something they've heard on a podcast like today,
Yep.
or a doctor or a friend or a practitioner or someone, this is bad if you have this diagnosis, so take it out. And they come with 5 foods that they're eating, and they have eaten those 5 foods for 2 years. And their precious body it's used every store imaginable. And now it's starting to actually rob from the body system because the nutrition level is so low because of this food situation.
Mm-hmm.
Working with a precious client right now that, I mean, she went to the brink of death about a year ago because of this.
Mm-hmm.
Did a food sensitivity test. We did a gut test to see how her body was able to process food, but also what foods she could bring in.
Oh my
She's
gosh.
7 right now, exploring so many fun new foods. And because we have that combination of knowledge, like we just got test results, blood work back, and her body is looking so much better. But if she hadn't known, like she was literally afraid to try the foods that came back on her food sensitivity test as safe. She's like, ha ha ha, can I do this? I'm like, the only way to know is to try. And she's
Yeah.
expanded how she's able to feed her body. And it doesn't look at all like the normal diet that she should be on for her diagnosis that actually doesn't fit anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I love, and I want to say this. Yes, please, if you're listening right now, do not think that you need to eliminate cinnamon from your diet. Okay. That may not be the case for you. Please don't do that. And as you're listening to us talk here, like there can be, and I love what you said, you go and you listen to podcasts and do research and you read books and you do all of this stuff to figure out, how do I help my own health? And I think that that's amazing and it's empowering, and congratulations, and please continue to be an advocate for your own health. However, every time you hear that somebody took this out of their diet and it made everything, so much better, that does not mean that it's the case for you. And what Melissa is saying here is if you do that, next thing you know, you're eating 5 foods. And that is not good for your body. That is not nourishing to your system. And you could be, well, not only that, it's boring as all get out, right? Like it is so important to us as humans to be able to consume foods, and it's social for us. And it's, like, this goes into so many other areas of life that if you restrict your food down to 5 foods that you can eat, you're going to be miserable. That's all there is to it. From multiple angles, physically, emotionally, socially, you're going to be miserable. So please don't do that. There are better ways to do this. And I just wanted to put that little note in here right now. Don't eliminate out of your diet everything we say has happened to somebody else. This is really important. So So in talking about this, I think we've touched on the fact that, we delve deeper into food sensitivity testing. You did mention we've got the difference in test between the $35 ones and the 500 plus that we use to actually understand what is going on in your body. And I think what is so cool about this is we're no longer going to guess, right? Like you said. And I love this because I guessed basically for many years. I did not think I was guessing, but I was guessing, right? As a practitioner and using really educated guesses, but they were not the right things to do. In fact, Melissa is working with right now a client that I worked with previously that we got her, so far, but could not get past what was really causing her symptoms. Some things improved and she lost some weight and she was able to feel a little more energy for a while, but it didn't last long term. And so I'm actually really loving seeing the work that Melissa is doing with this client now, where I got her to a certain level. And I want everybody to hear this and understand this. If you have been doing, the AIPs, the elimination diets, the keto diets, I can name all of them, right? There's so many of them out there. If you've been doing those and you've gotten to a certain point and now you are like stuck and you're still feel like crap, there is more to it. There is
Oh,
more to it. So, Melissa, can you go a little bit deeper into, you were talking about the IgG and the IgA and the IgE and all of
that-
these immunoglobulins that we're looking at in food sensitivities, and how there is a difference between food sensitivities and food allergies. So can you go a little deeper into really the science behind that?
hmm. I would love to. So I'm going to start by kind of putting this together, hopefully for you guys. So if you have been diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, very likely in your path of testing to get that diagnosis, somewhere your practitioner tested for IgG, IgA, and IgE immunoglobulins to see if they were activated. That's the most simple way to test and see if the immune system is firing and is on fire, basically. Okay. So guess what we test when we're testing for food sensitivities? IgG, IgA, and if we're testing for food allergies, IgE. Hopefully that will bridge the gap between this set of knowledge and this set of knowledge, because we're literally testing the immune system's response to specific foods.
So just real quick, I want to kind of summarize what you just said. Anyone who has received an autoimmune disorder diagnosis, what has
Mm.
happened is they have been diagnosed off of IgG, IgA, IgE. I'm saying all of the letters there. And what that correlates to then when it comes to food sensitivities, we are testing the exact same things that were utilized to give them a diagnosis.
Exactly.
Interesting. So that being the case, I mean, in my mind, it logically makes sense then that there are a number of autoimmune diagnoses that are caused by food sensitivities. So go ahead and go into that, Melissa.
Oh, you guys, I feel like we just dropped the mic. Because this is so revolutionary and y'all, it's so simple. It can be so simple. Is it okay if I share a graphic with you guys? And I know for everybody that's listening only, we'll try to talk through this graphic.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely. I would
so,
love to see that.
am I able to share?
I do believe so.
Okay. So this is a graphic that's created by the lab company that we use for the food sensitivity test that I like to use in our practice. And I love the way they break this down so simply and easily. So what we're looking at is a graph that identifies IgG and IgA and IgE reactivity in the body and what happens and where do we see those symptoms happen.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, if we have somebody that has an IgA reactivity to a food, that reactivity or that reaction is going to show up in their saliva, increased saliva, thickened saliva, constantly coughing, clearing your throat, feeling like there's congestion, tears. We see both like watery eyes, but also dry eye, intestinal mucus, increased intestinal mucus, and bronchial secretions. It can end up really affecting the lungs. It can look and feel like a sinus infection, or like you just can't breathe how you want to or need to. Tightness in the chest. I see you have a question.
I do. So Melissa, this IgA, this is the like histamine reaction, correct?
This is a food sensitivity reaction.
Okay, so this is the food sensitivity reaction. And this, so the only thing I was thinking about is, when somebody does have like a peanut allergy, which maybe we'll get to that in a minute,
That's the
right?
that's the IgE.
Okay, all right. I'm going to let you keep talking. So sorry about that.
No, you're good. I love that you're clarifying this for everyone that's listening and can't actually look at this with us.
Yeah. Well, what I don't
So,
want someone to think then is that, so this is a mucosal tissue, right? So the saliva, the tears, the intestinal, you're talking about bronchial secretions,
yeah.
coughing and whatnot, this is not the allergic reaction that we would get like anaphylactic shock from, right? That like
Yes.
closes everything off. So I just want to, yeah, clarify that. And I'm
This
sure
is
you'll get to
slow
that in a moment.
grow.
Okay,
This is slow grow.
got it.
And this is what can be like for people that have just a constant cough or a constant, always have phlegm in their throat, or they're so susceptible to a sinus infection or allergies because they're already congested.
Very neat.
So this type of reactivity in the body, an IgA reactivity, 70% of that is derived from the gastrointestinal tract. So what that tells us is that the reactivity happens once that food gets actually into the small intestine, which then creates a greater space because it takes at least, 20 minutes, maybe an hour for the food to actually fully become a part of the process in the small intestine.
Mm-hmm.
The half-life of this reactivity is 6 to 8 days. So what that means is the reactivity can build up to 8 days and take another 8 days to recede.
Mm.
When we have that kind of a reactivity, our monocytes and neutrophils, very likely, if we do a blood test and check our white blood cells, these are going to be activated. So this is a clue that we can get from just good old-fashioned yearly blood work.
Okay.
And I'm just going down the line here talking about IgA reactivity. This is a delayed reactivity, and this can really, really start to damage the mucosal layer in the digestive tract. And this, quite frankly, is where we then start to see leaky gut.
Mm-hmm.
If we get leaky intestinal tract, then we get another layer of immune system reactivity, and it just starts to compound.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sense? So some of the signs and symptoms in this timeline, the most noticed generally are mucosal irritation. This can be anywhere in the body that there's mucus. So from top to the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Gastrointestinal distress, bloating, stomach distension, that you're thinking, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm 6 months pregnant
Yeah.
all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, okay, just real quick though, and the reason I want to clarify this is that we are talking about different mucosal irritation, right? And I want to be very clear about where, all of the mucus linings are in the body and how this can show up. So when you think about a mucosal lining, talking with the audience here, you may think about your nose, right? Because that's where you think that mucus comes from. You may think about your esophagus because if you cough and you have a cold, you'll get mucus that comes out there as well, right? But it
Mhm.
goes beyond just the face here, right? We have mucosal lining in the vaginal walls. We have mucosal lining in the rectum. So you could be experiencing issues in those areas to a food sensitivity that could show up as um, itching. It can show up as dryness even. It can show up as unusual discharge from, either one of those orifices. And I think that's really important to think about. Like if you have, for the ladies, if you have a chronic problem with yeast infection, this could very well potentially be a food sensitivity as well. So I just wanted to make sure that we highlight all of the mucosal areas of the body as people are thinking, is this something that I may be dealing with?
Yes. So another way to think of this is any place in the body that has connection to the outside world,
Mhm.
because the mucosal barrier is literally the body's part of the body's defense system to capture anything that is foreign or shouldn't be there. So for example, when you're in a dust storm, you're making more mucus to catch the dust so that it can be expelled out of the body, right?
Mhm.
Same thing in the lungs. Same thing in the digestive tract.
Mhm.
Same thing in out into your eustachian tube,
Yep.
out into your ears. So when I talk about top to bottom, it's your sinuses, it's everything that has connection to with your ears, anything that goes down, your breathing pathways, clear down through the body, just like you were saying, Andrea, every piece that is connected to the outside world in any way is protected by a mucosal layer.
Yes. And that mucosal layer is very important. It is so important, but there has to be a balance to it.
Exactly. But that's where most of your immune system lies, is in that mucosal layer. Because if you think about it, your immune system is your body's defense system.
Yep.
It's your army protecting you. And when things are coming in constantly and being present there, and we've got a response, an immune response in the mucosal layer, I mean, that's what's supposed to happen. That's your body's defense system. It's not your body falling off the rails and doing something stupid.
Right. I like that.
So, yeah, I love this discussion. So this is the one that I really want us to lean into as well, is the IgG reactivity. So this is a different type of immunoglobulin that is activated in the immune system. So this lives more often in the cells, like there's a greater percentage of the IgG immunoglobulins that live in the cells. So if we have an IgG reactivity, the antibody half-life is 21 to 23 days. This is why when we talk about people who have an IgA sensitivity to something like gluten, it can take up to 4 months for the antibodies to gluten to cool enough that we can start to see a change in symptomology that is being caused by that sensitivity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And with the antibody half-life being 21 to 23 days, this is a compounding. effect that happens.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge. And this is quite frankly something that you don't want to mess with and you don't want to miss. When you're working on truly deeply recovering from an autoimmune condition. But this piece of knowledge can be the doorway to recovery.
Yeah. And
Does that
that's
make sense?
huge. I mean, it's like we said earlier, it's unfortunately, when we think about autoimmune disorders, we think that it's super duper complicated, right? Because we've been told that they're life sentences, right? There's no cure for them. There's nothing you can do about this. We can take some medication that's going to help you feel a little bit better here, there, maybe. You can try an elimination diet. You can do the AIP diet. You can do these different things. But in truth, the reason that it seems like there's no cure for it or whatever is because it actually can be so simple, right? We don't have to make it so difficult. But that also can be hard to accept. It can be hard to accept that I got a diagnosis for lupus, for RA, for whatever it may be, because of something I am eating. That can be really hard to accept it to be that simple, right? And so I think that's why this is really an important discussion about this for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's huge. And the thing of it is, this knowledge is within our reach. It's not some nebulous thing out there in the ethers that we hope maybe someday we'll be able to figure out. It just breaks my heart. I'm in so many groups, right, on Facebook, and they're like, oh, I'm praying for a cure for this, or I'm praying for a cure for that. And I get it. I hear it. I hear it with my heart. But what if what we needed to know was actually already available to us? We just didn't know heretofore where to find that information.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I will say, it is kind of a human flaw, right? That we have to overcomplicate everything. We have to overthink everything. We have to make it some big, huge issue, right? I mean, we all do it. It's
Mhm.
how our brains are wired, but we don't need to. We don't need to make it so complicated. And, I love what you're saying. People are praying for a cure and, they're reaching for a cure, and it's there. It is there. That prayer has actually been answered. We just can't accept that it's been answered in such a simplistic manner. So I think that, if you can accept that it's there, it has been given to us already. We know how to find it. We know how to test for it. We know what to do once we get the test results. And so, your prayers are answered. We just have to bring it down to simple terms.
Yeah. And I think another thing that kind of stands in the way for some folks, and one of the reasons I can speak to this is it used to really stand in my way. So I really understand this piece, is that because it feels so big and so oblique and like I have no clue what to do with this, that we go like this. We give it to someone else. We give it to someone in a white coat. We give it to somebody with a lot of letters behind their name because we're like, I have no idea what to do here. When actually we can know the answers, and recovery, and I use this word on purpose instead of cure, recovery is already possible inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
We get to make the decisions what to do with the information that comes in. We get to choose what happens here. But in all reality, everything that we need to be, I'm going to use the word cured inside quotes, is already hardwired inside of our bodies. We have what we need. How do we tap into that? How do we find the knowledge and the clues and the breadcrumbs that we need to actually help ourselves be well? And that's what we're talking about today, is how can we decode this? How can you decode this for you and take the steps that you need to take to be well? What I learned in my journey was that I am in full control of what happens here. I don't need to give it away to somebody else. It's my responsibility. No one else, even though I worked with some very brilliant practitioners, nobody else could make me well.
No.
I had to do the work and own the responsibility of what happens here.
Yep. I love that. I love that because I think the word cure, when I think of it, and I don't want to keep saying it over and over again because I don't really care for the word, but that to me evokes somebody else coming in
Mhm.
and doing something, or a medication coming in and doing something to make it better. And it's almost like a miracle, right, that this thing exists that I can do or take or whatever, and then we call it a cure, which most of the time it's not. Anyways, I'm gonna get off on that rant. But the real miracle is our own bodies. And not only, just when you think of your body, please do not just think of your body, but it is your body and your mind and what you are actually capable of if you utilize, and this word may sound funny, the technology that exists in your body. Honestly, we are amazing, amazing,
Oh, yes.
creatures with so much available to us if we go and find it and work with the
Yeah.
systems in the body that are intended to regenerate, right? I think about if anybody listening has ever used a self-healing mat for cutting, right? And if you cut it, it self-heals, it goes back together, right? And our bodies are the same way. If
Yep.
something happens in the body, it's an offense to your body, a cut,
Mhm.
a eating of a wrong food, and I don't want to say wrong food, but eating of a food that your body does not accept because of whatever's going on, but it
Yep.
can self-heal. Your body is very capable of self-healing, and if you walk away with nothing else today, please walk away with the knowledge that your body is capable of self-healing. Bottom line.
Yes.
Bottom line.
Yeah. Oh, I love this conversation because it puts the power squarely back in your lap, in my lap, in the lap of you that is listening today.
Notice she
And what,
said power
yep,
and not blame. It is not blame. It is power. It is power.
yeah. And I think a lot of times when we have an autoimmune condition or something that's been told us that we have, a big diagnosis of big, little, you name it, it feels like suddenly we're powerless. No. One of the things we love to do here is decode and help you decode what's going on in your body and why, and then give you the tools that you need and then walk beside you as you are recovering. Because at the end of the day, the whole idea behind recovery is you being able to find your own balance, homeostasis again, and be able to just walk right into your life a whole, strong, beautiful person because you know how your body works, you know what your body needs, you know what your body doesn't need, and you know how to retain that balance.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So one of the things that if you've been listening to us for a while, or maybe this is the first episode you've ever listened to of us, but Melissa and I get off on tangents quite often because we're very passionate about what we do here, right? And about helping people to understand their bodies and actually work with their bodies. But I'm going to redirect us back, Melissa, to this chart so that we can continue to go through this IgG and explain it in a little more detail.
Awesome. Yes, we did get off, didn't we? All right. So, popping back into talking about IgG, this, like the area of origin for IgG immunoglobulins are in most body cells. And this is a delayed reactivity, and it's a type 3 hypersensitivity. I won't decode that for you too much. It would make your brain fry probably. But what I want us to think about is when you have this type of a reactivity, it is highly variable. Like it can show up in so many different ways. But the thing that makes it a commonality is it's a systemic response. Okay. It's whole body system response. IgG antibodies can deposit in any tissue and cause inflammation. And I want to circle any tissue. So that can be your shoulder, that can be your thigh, that can be your big toe, that can be your brain, that can be your spinal column, that can be your nerves, it can be your circulatory system, it can be in your veins, in your heart, any tissue in the body.
Yeah.
This is a big one.
So do you find that, we're focusing in on the fact that it could be any tissue. Do you find that's IgG response to be the one that is like the biggest offender, the biggest culprit of different symptomologies that show up for people?
Actually, yes.
And is that
And when
because
you're
of how
looking at your
hard it
food
is?
sense,
Is that because of how hard it
yeah,
is to determine? Yeah.
because the inflammation for that can show up in any tissue in the body. So it can look like rheumatoid arthritis. It can look like migrating pain in the muscles or joints. It can look like cardiac issues. It can look like lung issues. It can look like the beginnings of Alzheimer's.
Wow.
It can look like the beginnings of Parkinson's. It can look like MS. It can look like fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
It
Amazing.
can look like anxiety.
Anxiety. But Melissa, we're talking about autoimmune disorders here. Are you telling me that an IgG response can cause anxiety?
Oh, honey chow. Yes.
I like goading her sometimes too to get her to keep.
It can look like seizures. It can look like epilepsy. It can look like autism.
Yep. Incredible. Incredible. So, I mean, the importance of proper food sensitivity testing could have a huge impact on someone's life who is dealing with some sort of chronic illness. And please understand, this doesn't have to mean that you've had you don't have to have had an autoimmune disorder diagnosis. In fact, I would prefer that you didn't have that, to start looking at what can I do that is simple, honestly, to improve my health, right? I mean, am I right in thinking this could be, chronic migraines? This could be
Oh, yeah.
this could be chronic itchy skin. This could be chronic dry skin. This could be so many different things, right? And we talk so much about chronic illness, and all that chronic illness is, and people want to think that it means that somebody is just absolutely desolate, right? They can't get up, they can't move, they can't do anything. because they're just chronically ill. Well, that's not what it is. It's that you have a chronic, persistent system or symptom that is causing discomfort in your life in some way, shape, or form. It does not have
Yep.
to be some huge thing that is so impactful that you can't live your life. Chronic illness exists in, I don't like giving percentages, but a vast majority of the people that you run into every single day, we all have something that could be considered a chronic illness. And a lot of it comes back to IgG response.
Yeah. Throw in a couple more that I was thinking of while you were sharing. Terrible periods.
Mm-hmm.
Get pregnant. Thyroid imbalance, Graves' disease. Yeah, those are directly related to chronic inflammation that can be caused by food sensitivity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Something I want to put out here is that this is a huge base knowledge that we need to have for you, or that you need to have for you. Is it going to fix everything 100%? Maybe, maybe not. There are other pieces that can be a part of this, but this is a big one. And if you can gain a level of knowledge around what your body needs and doesn't need as far as food, that can go a long ways towards helping you feel better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very
Mm.
cool. Along those lines, just know that I will be dropping information down in the show notes that you'll be able to get a hold of, um, testing or, being able to meet with Melissa or myself as well to go over testing and stuff. I'll be dropping that information in the show notes. So check that out for sure.
Awesome. Love it.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we've gone pretty deep into this today on different things. And I think that, it's really important for us to highlight, the two that we did. And I think that I will tell everybody, and I know that some people probably saw this if you were looking at the screen, and it may be something that you are dealing with. And we will be doing another episode on this very soon. And we are talking about the mast cell syndrome.
Yes.
Um,
I do that because it's so big of a conversation.
absolutely.
Excuse me.
Absolutely. And so I think we'll record an episode specifically on that. But I just do want to say, if that is something that, you are in the throes of right now, and you are, going down the rabbit hole of all of the things and stuff, do know that there are ways to know, right?
So much. So much. Yeah.
And so I will leave a little teaser of that. We will have an episode coming up very soon on that. I want to wrap up today with just one thought that popped in my head as we were going through this. And this can turn into a whole nother episode, and we're not going to do that right now. But when we're talking about food sensitivities,
Mhm.
and we talked about one particular individual who it was cinnamon, right?
Sorry.
I've worked with other individuals where it's spinach, right?
I know.
And so what I want to say is that you could be eating very clean. You can be eating very healthy, right? And doing all of the things that you've been told are the right thing to do. And you're still having symptoms. Do know that everybody, I'm like, for anybody listening, I'm showing my body, right?
Yep.
Is different. And so just because you believe that, or just because you are doing clean eating and healthy eating and doing all of the things right, there still could be a food sensitivity at the crux of that. And like I said, not getting into so many different things, but our food has so many things that is done to it now. And the nutritional value of our food is so much less than it was even 30 years ago. just understand that there are so many factors that go into it that I don't want anybody to, play the blame game of when you find out that, cinnamon or spinach was the cause. Be like, oh my gosh, I was doing it wrong all along and I've caused this, to myself. It's not your fault, but we do need to find the answers to it. We do need to find out what works best for your body. So those are kind of my closing thoughts, Melissa. What are your closing thoughts for today?
I love that. And I'm going to kind of piggyback on that a little bit, simply because for the most of us, and especially you listening right now, you've done so many things to help yourself and you've done so much study. And it's not like you're sitting on your behinder and not trying to do what you can to be well.
Mhm.
However, anything that is not tailored or specifically for your body is, it may or may not work. So when I say that, I have so many clients that come in and they're like, I've been eating clean for, 20 years. And we do a food sensitivity test. And, some of the very amazing foods that they've been leaning into are actually part of what is causing their problem. And it's a mind-blowing situation. They're like, you are kidding me. This was supposed to help me. And there's a whole feeling of sometimes betrayal when you learn that something that you thought was really great for you isn't so great. I mean, it's great for other people, but maybe not for you. So being open to that type and depth of investigation can again give you some of the keys that you need to be able to unlock what's happening for you and why, and help you walk through your next door of recovery.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you, Melissa, for those closing thoughts on that. They are so important. And thank you to everyone who has joined us today and listened, and maybe you watched and got to see our expressions as we're talking about some of this. We do get very passionate, but we thank you all for joining us today. We love you all very much, and we wish you very well on your road to recovery. And we'll see you next time.